Our next guest says the Federal Reserve needs to be stopped and the spending needs to be stopped. If a new spending bill hitting the Senate floor is any indication, we should all be very skeptical about whatever the supercommittee decides. Democrats claim a new bill cuts spending by $1 billion. Critics say it actually increases spending by nearly $10 billion. Joining us now, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky from Capitol Hill. Senator Paul, it's a pleasure. Welcome to Freedom Watch. Even though we're only a couple of blocks from you, here in the belly of the beast, it's always nice to see you.
I just heard you were in town. I can't believe you didn't come over and visit us.
Let's not get into that, but thanks for joining us. What is the Senate about to do that it wants to spend more money next year than was spent last year and miraculously call that a cut?
Well, that's the interesting thing. I tell people that the way I understand it, a cut would be that you would spend less next year and that your deficit would be less next year. But under the debt ceiling plan we passed in August, all of the caps go up every year. So we're going to spend more each year and we're going to increase the debt more each year. None of it are real cuts.
How is it, without getting too into the weeds, Senator Paul, that this is even being debated? I thought the Congress had already reviewed how much money was going to be spent in the next fiscal year. I thought those debates were ancient history. Or is this that budget that the Senate never passed?
Well, that's the thing. We haven't passed a budget in nearly 3 years up here. It's actually illegal for you to pass an appropriations bill without a budget to compare it to. So we're in direct defiance of our own rules right now because we're now passing appropriations bills for which there is no budget to compare to.
What do you say to your colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle who will vote for this when you remind them the government is broke? It doesn't have any more money to spend. We shouldn't be spending what we don't have. Now, when you make that argument, does it fall on deaf ears with your colleagues?
Well, there's a disconnect. There are people up here, all 47 Republicans believe in a balanced budget amendment, but quite a few of them aren't willing to cut a couple $100 million here, a couple $100 million here. In fact, you hear the argument that because it's only a couple $100 million, it won't balance the budget, so therefore we should just disregard how much it costs and keep voting for it. But what you have to do is, if you cannot cut $200 or $300 million, you're never going to cut $1.5 trillion. So you got to get started somewhere. And I think you have to look everywhere for savings. And you're right, there still isn't the willpower among many Republicans and most of the Democrats to actually cut spending.
Earlier today, not far from where you and I are now, Ben Bernanke and the Federal Reserve made noises about printing more money. Are we ever going to be able to tame this monster? Is it time for a serious audit of the Federal Reserve? Is there enough political will on the Congress finally to have such an audit? Are there enough members of Congress to overcome the president's resistance to letting us find out under color of law what the Fed has been doing?
I think yes. You know, over 330 members in the House signed on and co-sponsored Audit the Fed last time around. We had 37 senators. I think if people knew that people are privately enriching themselves through the central banking system, I think if people knew that foreign banks like Gaddafi's central bank were privately enriching themselves with taxpayer money, I think if people knew that people were getting wealthy off of the taxpayer, that it would come to a head very quickly. And if some of that anger, which I think is misplaced on the Occupy Wall Street, were directed against the central bank and against those using the central bank to enrich themselves, then I think we'd get it done.
Senator Rand Paul, it's a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.